Before the Kohen comes, he commands that the house should be entirely emptied. Because once he comes and sees the discoloration, it's possible that right then and there, it will be declared tsaras. Which means that not only is the house, the actual structure, impure, but anything in it is also impure. And so, if we take everything out of the house before that adjudication is made, regardless of how obvious it might be to people who are correctly identifying it as tsaras, again, it doesn't matter, the Kohen didn't say yet that it is tsaras, it is not yet tsaras. So therefore, if we take everything out of the house, and when he comes and he sees, and yes, he says it's tsaras, yes, the house, the structure is impure, but there's nothing in the house, and therefore all of those things are not impure. They were saved, as it were. On its face, it sounds like a very smart thing, because all the stuff that's in the house, you don't want to have to try to save, right? If it becomes impure, then that's bad. Except that when we look at the laws of impurity and the requirements of purification, it actually doesn't turn out to be as bad as we might initially think. First and foremost, other vessels made out of metal, vessels made out of bone, vessels made out of all sorts of other kinds of materials, can be purified. So let's say we don't empty the house, the Kohen comes, it is tsaras, and he immediately says that it's tsaras, and everything in the house becomes impure. All of those vessels can be purified, even though they were deemed impure because of this whole thing with tsaras. Furthermore, a person is not prohibited from being impure or from having impure things. He's prohibited from, for example, entering the temple when he's impure, or eating tithing if he's a Kohen or something while he's impure, or while there are vessels that are impure. That's a prohibition. But there's nothing inherently prohibited about being impure. So what's the problem with keeping all of these things inside of the house, even if it means that they will eventually be deemed impure by the Kohen who comes to adjudicate the possible tsaras? There is one thing, however, that cannot be purified, and that is the earthenware vessel. Earthenware vessels, the Torah tells us, cannot be purified. The only thing that one can do once an earthenware vessel is deemed impure is to break it. Therefore, the Torah requires that all of the possessions that the person has in his house be taken out of the house, even though they themselves either have a rectification in that they can be purified even if deemed impure, or they can just remain impure, and that's fine too, because the earthenware vessel, you have nothing to do with it once it is impure. So for the sake of the earthenware vessel, we have to basically schlep the entire house out of the house, all the possessions in the house out of the house. Doesn't seem like a worthwhile endeavor. Hours of labor to move the stuff out just for some tchotchkes that are very, very cheap, and earthenware vessels are the cheapest things you can get. But the fact is that everything that is in the possession of a person is a material resource that God has entrusted in him or with him in order to serve God. And so, as cheap as it might be, as not so significant in comparison to other vessels or other things that he has in the house, even the earthenware vessel has to be taken care of, has to be, paid attention to, lest it become impure, and then it can no longer be used to serve God.